It's no secret that thousands of young women were mobilized by the Japanese army during World War II to serve as sex slaves. Now in South Korea, a group is taking Tokyo to court for reparations. That's today's conversation taking place in Asia now. It's no secret that one of the lingering issues that continue to contribute to frayed relations between South Korea and Japan is that surrounding the comfort women, or the sexual slaves Japan used during the Second World War. This is especially true since on Thursday, Kim Yon-hee passed away, leaving the total number of South Korean survivors at 49. This week, it was also announced that Yoo Hee-nam, an 87-year-old sex slave survivor, plans on leading her peers in a suit against Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, Emperor Akihito, Japanese media who called the women prostitutes, and Japanese companies accused of war crimes. In addition, they will reportedly seek $20 million in damages, or about $2 million per person. The case is planned to be filed in a San Francisco district court if Japan doesn't show sincere attempts to amend its past wrongdoings by July 1st. The group hopes that this case will confirm that Japan's actions were crimes against humanity. Now, this case does raise a lot of questions, so I reached out to An Shin Kwan, who heads the House of Sharing, where some of the comfort women live and share their stories for future generations. Mr. An also happens to be one of the individuals assisting with the case. Now, originally, Mr. An agreed to answer questions for this podcast via email, but at the recording time, those answers, simply never came. However, Mr. An and Kim Hyung-jin, the legal representative for the comfort women, have released additional information that may help frame their position. And number one on my list of questions was, why are they filing the case now? The Japanese government continues to reduce or distort facts about comfort women. We wish to file a lawsuit to find a solid solution to this case. The Japanese government keeps derogating the victimized women who are still suffering from the pain inflicted 70 years ago, so we have no choice but to hold Japan accountable. Eok-son, an 88-year-old former sex slave, said, quote, "Before we were a colony of Japan, and now we have our own country. But still, we old women are forced to solve the issue by ourselves." End quote. The suit is also seeking a new apology from Japan, and the women have set aside July 1st as the deadline for Japan to show sincere intent to make amends. Now, I was curious as to what exactly they were seeking, given that the Kono and Murayama statements specifically apologized to the comfort women. One clue came from Eok-sun. "What we are demanding is for the Japanese emperor to kneel before us and apologize before the last of us are dead." Another aspect of this lawsuit is, of course, the monetary compensation portion. After all, these women are seeking some $20 million in damages. Now, Kim Hyung-jin, the attorney representing them, said that money is absolutely not the point. The point is that Japan admits its war crimes and offers a sincere apology. Really? Well, if that's the point, then why include money at all? Now, one of the questions I sent in specifically addressed this point, because Japan maintains that all reparations were paid in full and final as part of the 1965 Treaty on Basic Relations between Japan and the Republic of Korea. In fact, some $300 million was paid to the South Korean government at its request, rather than going directly to the intended recipients. So I wanted to ask why they felt that the comfort women were entitled to further compensation from Japan and not the money that was given directly to Seoul. Now, this isn't the first case the House of Sharing has tried. In 2000, in federal court in Washington, D.C., they tried a similar class action lawsuit. The court there then sided with Japan, stating that the specific case was beyond its jurisdiction. So why exactly try this same case, but now in a California court? The response they've released thus far to media outlets via Kim Hyung-jin: many precedents on war crimes have been set since 2000, including the landmark judgments made on the Rwanda genocide. It also doesn't help the defendants that they continue to defame former sex slaves by denying the role they played in their plight. I truthfully didn't find that answer all too satisfying, especially since the reason why they chose California has never fully been answered. Now, for a greater perspective on this case, I'm joined on the phone once more by Jonathan Miller, fellow on East Asia with the EastWest Institute. Jonathan, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Steve. Great to be back.
So, we have this case that looks like it's going to be filed shortly after July begins. And I want to ask you, how common is a case like this? I mean, we have South Koreans suing Japan in the United States. To me, it just doesn't seem like the right venue. But I wanted to get your opinion. I mean, is there a precedent for this? I mean, how common is something like this?
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, I believe that the case, that the proposed lawsuit that the House of Sharing is threatening as of July 1st, it's not a very common case. And I think you're right that the venue doesn't really appear right. As you noted, in the year 2000, there was a similar case that was brought about in the U.S., which was eventually overturned. I think that my understanding is in this current situation, the House of Sharing is focusing it on, from one individual, whereas the other one was more of a class action lawsuit. And I believe that they're obviously doing this to coincide with Abe's statement coming up this summer, and with the current negotiations happening between Japan and South Korea on the comfort woman issue. So, from my perspective, I see it more framed in that sense of more of a tactic, whether, and I don't want to necessarily say it's an empty threat, but I think this is, you can even see in their motivations for the case, it's more about having a statement and having an official resolution of the comfort woman issue that's acceptable to them, rather than purely about getting the largest compensation. So I feel like that's the way I'm seeing it, is more of a tool that they feel that they really don't, they're kind of out of options to influence the current negotiations.
Right, and that's one of the things they have said. But if we take a look at these cases, is a third-party country the right place to have it, or would something like the International Court of Justice be more appropriate, taking a look back aside from this case? Yeah,
I mean, I think that it's not unheard of to have a case like this in a third country. I feel like one of the issues of probably having it within South Korea would have been some of the the sensitivities of other cases that have been conducted in South Korea with regards to Japan's colonial period. I'm thinking of some of the cases brought against some of the industrial manufacturers at the time, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, for example. And I think that that feels is a larger implication, obviously, on South Korea and the government, if that were to happen. And I believe, I think we may get into it later, but with the Japan-Korea Basic Treaty, I feel like there's less ability and less latitude for that to happen in South Korea. I don't necessarily know that the ICJ would be a correct kind of area either. I know that from some of the comments coming up from the House of Sharing, they've made some analogies to precedents such as the Rwandan genocide and things like that. But I think that there's a fairly large divergence in the kind of issues that they're comparing there. So I'm not quite sure that I see that comparison as being completely accurate.
Okay, and you brought up the 1965 Treaty on Basic Relations between Japan and South Korea, and that goes to the heart of the matter of compensation. Now, in this particular case, they're looking to have a $20 million judgment levied against Japan, $2 million per person that's going to be involved with this suit. And we've talked about this before. During that 1965 agreement, Japan paid a whole bunch of money to South Korea. Japan wanted to pay it directly to the individuals. South Korea stepped in and said, no, we'll take it, then use that money for domestic projects. Now, in the 1965 agreement, there's an arbitration clause that allows people to go back and redress things. But does the treaty really allow this type of lawsuit to take place?
Yeah, I think there is a clause there in there for arbitration, but I think that the nature of this lawsuit wouldn't really fit in with the spirit of the 1965 treaty. I mean, if you look at I believe it's Article 3 there in the treaty, and one of the clauses in that, I mean, it sets out quite clearly that, you know, if there's any dispute between the two parties, that be settled primarily through diplomatic channels. So I think what they're trying to say in that is that, you know, any disagreements that haven't been settled within the basic treaty should be resolved government to government, and that's kind of the process which is currently underway. And personally, I'm hopeful that something can get done with that. Ideally, before Abe's statement on August 15th, but that's to be determined. But I think if you look at it based on the 1965 treaty, it really presses the issue that any disputes should be settled through the respective diplomatic channels.
Okay, one final question. The United States, of course, is allies with both countries and has especially been fostering closer ties with Japan regarding the South China Sea. Now, if this suit does move forward and is filed in San Francisco and California, does that have any kind of policy ramifications for the United States, since it's essentially going to be adjudicating between two of its allies?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that the United States is not, obviously is very sensitive to the tensions between Japan and South Korea. Obviously wouldn't be overly happy of being even further embedded in this if the suit were to go forward. But I think the United States largely views this in a more macro level and about the necessity for these two sides to come together. I think the U.S. is quite happy with the fact that right now that there seems to be this the negotiations right now on the comfort women issue, and I mean there's a lot of people in the U.S. who are quietly optimistic about what may come out of the Abe statement. I mean, it's whether it'll be a verbatim repeat of previous statements. I doubt that. But if he touches on any of the touch point words that South Korea or China is looking for, I think that's something that some in the U.S. are optimistic about. I think for myself, one of the key things, and I think a lot of Americans may agree, is to really get to this point on the comfort women, ideally before that comes, because I think a lot of things that the U.S. is going to be concerned about that may or may not get said on August 15th will be more scrutinized, I think, if there's not a deal beforehand. So I think that from the U.S. perspective, that's the biggest thing, it's on the foreign policy side that they're concerned about. I mean, the suit itself is, it's an issue, but I think it's just another symptom of the broader problem, and which the U.S. is well aware of now between Japan and South Korea.
All right, Jonathan Miller, fellow on East Asia with the EastWest Institute, thank you so much for joining me again.
Thanks very much, Steve.
I'd love to hear your thoughts about this case. What do you think should happen? Please leave your thoughts in the comments on Facebook or Twitter. After I had concluded recording this podcast, I did get an email from the House of Sharing saying that Mr. An couldn't get to those questions because of the death of the comfort woman on Thursday. Asia Now features extended content, originally broadcast as part of the Asian News Weekly podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, please share it with your friends, and if you haven't, subscribe. Subscribing is free, and when you do, the next episode is delivered automatically to you. You can subscribe on our website, asiannewsweekly.net, or in your favorite podcast application. You'll be able to keep up with more news from the region by following Asian News Weekly on Facebook or Twitter, and if you have any comments, questions, or feedback, be sure to drop us a line at podcast@asiannewsweekly.net. Thank you so much for listening today, and until next time, remember to be true to yourself and to always be awesome.